Basket of wisdom. Tears of Cassandra. The sun had long sunk behind the hills, leaving behind a blanket of darkness. The streets of the city were alive with the noise of hurried footsteps, conversations, and the honking of cars. Yet, in the heart of the night, amidst the shadows, Cassandra sat by the cold window, her eyes staring out into the void. Her world felt like a storm, and she was the lone ship, drifting aimlessly. Cassandra's tears had fallen countless times, and they were not tears of sadness alone. They were tears of pain, of frustration, of helplessness. She had cried for so long that sometimes she wondered if her heart could bear the weight of it all. Cassandra was named after the prophetess, the one who foresaw the future, but was never believed. Her name was beautiful, but it felt like a cruel reminder to her, an echo of the life she would never have. Her father, once a proud man full of promise, had fallen from grace. He had lost everything: his job, his dignity, and his family's respect. He spent his days at a local bar, drowning his pain in alcohol, leaving Cassandra and her mother to fend for themselves. She could hear him mumbling from the living room late into the night, but it wasn't the sound of a man fighting for his future. It was the sound of defeat. Her mother, on the other hand, was a shadow of the woman she once was. A once vibrant woman who sang songs to her daughter, now lay in a bed riddled with the pain of a cancerous disease that slowly drained the life from her body. Cassandra couldn't remember the last time she had heard her mother's laughter, the last time her mother had scolded her playfully for being late to school. Cassandra had to grow up quickly. Her mother's voice was now nothing more than a whisper, and her father's love was drowned in whiskey. To survive, Cassandra had to take to the streets, hawking goods to passers-by. It was the only way to put food on the table, to buy her mother the medicine she needed, and to pay for her father's alcohol. Her legs ached from walking the streets all day, her skin burned from the harsh sun, but it didn't matter. She had no choice. Every step she took was a step away from the life she had dreamed of. Every step was a step closer to the reality she was forced to endure. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Cassandra walked through a quiet alley on her way home. She could smell the street vendors' fried foods and hear the laughter of children, but in that moment she felt alone. She was no longer just a girl. She was a burden, a reminder of her family's brokenness. It was then that he appeared, a man whose face she didn't recognize, but whose intentions were clear. Before she could scream, he pushed her to the ground, his hands silencing her cries. In the chaos that followed, all Cassandra could feel was the crushing weight of despair. Her body betrayed her, and her mind shattered. Her tears didn't come immediately. They didn't come when he left her bruised and broken on the cold ground. They came later, in the silence of her room, when she couldn't outrun the pain any longer. She cried for her mother, for her father, for herself, for a world that had forsaken her. Days passed, but the tears never stopped. Cassandra tried to be strong. She put on a brave face for her mother, trying to pretend that everything was okay, but inside, she was crumbling. The mental torture of that night haunted her, replaying in her mind like a never-ending loop. She had always believed in herself, but now, she didn't know who she was anymore. Her mother's health was deteriorating. She could no longer speak, but Cassandra could see the pain in her eyes, the helplessness. Every time Cassandra looked at her mother, she felt the crushing weight of her responsibility. She had to carry the world on her shoulders, and yet, she was falling apart. One night, as her mother lay sleeping, Cassandra couldn't take it anymore. She thought of running away, disappearing into the night, leaving the world behind. She felt trapped, as if there was no way out. But then, a voice whispered to her, a soft, gentle voice that seemed to come from deep within her. It was a voice of strength, a voice that reminded her that no matter how hard life had been, she had survived. She had made it through the storm before, and she could make it through again. She was a fighter. She was not a victim. Cassandra made a choice that night, a choice to fight, not just for herself, but for her mother, for the memory of the woman who had once dreamed big dreams for her daughter. She sought help. She reached out to a local charity for abused women, and slowly, the pieces of her broken life began to fall into place. She enrolled in a night school, determined to finish her education. The road was long, and the struggles were real. But Cassandra was no longer the same girl. She was determined. She was resilient. With each passing day, her mother grew weaker, but Cassandra knew she had done everything she could. She was proud of herself, for surviving, for continuing to fight even when the world seemed to want to swallow her whole. Her mother passed away, but Cassandra didn't give up. She channeled her grief into something powerful, something that would help others like her. She became an advocate for women, helping those who had been victims of violence, offering them the strength she had once lacked. Years later, Cassandra stood in front of a crowd of young girls, her voice steady, her heart full of hope. She told them her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. She told them that no matter what the world threw at them, they had the power to rise. She spoke of her tears, her pain, her struggles, and how they had shaped her into the woman she had become. The tears of Cassandra, she said, were not tears of defeat. They were the tears of a warrior, the tears of someone who had endured. And those tears gave birth to strength. The story of Cassandra teaches us that no matter how deep the pain, how heavy the burden, or how impossible the situation may seem, there is always hope. Even in the darkest moments, we have the power to rise, to rebuild, and to find strength in our struggles. No matter how many tears we shed, they are not the end of our story, they are the beginning of our transformation.